Warner Brothers is trying to figure out just what to do with Wonder Woman 1984. The sequel was forecast to be one of the year's biggest hits. That was until the pandemic forced the studio to rethink its release. Joining me now for our weekly check-in on the future of entertainment is author of the Bloomberg Screen Time newsletter, Lucas Shaw, who joins us live from New York this week. Lucas, this is a conversation studios have had to have this entire year. So walk us through the options that Warner Brothers has and why this release in particular is so important.
Well, as you said, Wonder Woman 1984 was going to be one of the year's biggest movies. Its predecessor grossed about $820 million. I think it's safe to say that in a normal theatrical one would have topped $1 billion. And while Warner Brothers has struggled at times with the DC movies, in particular some of the recent Superman movies, Wonder Woman was one of its real success stories. They have had to delay it already twice this year. It's currently set to come out on Christmas Day in theaters around the world. The studio is about to make a decision and it really has three options. One is to proceed as planned, continue to release it in theaters, a traditional release model. The other is to punt it to next year, which studios have done with a ton of titles, including most of the big ones. And then the other is to release it in theaters, but then to make it available on HBO Max as soon as a week or two later, which is very unusual in the modern movie business, but something that studios are experimenting with more and more, considering the state of movie theaters and their parent companies' interest in boosting their streaming services.
I'm really curious about this number two option because for me, who's like an uninitiated studio executive, I'm not a studio executive. This seems like the no-brainer here, Lucas. Just hold on to it until we can get back to theaters. Why is that not the clear choice for Warner Brothers?
Because Jason Kilar, who is the new CEO of Warner Media, is very eager to build up HBO Max, which is their streaming service. It launched earlier this year, sort of their answer to Netflix and now to Disney Plus. It's got a great library, but it has had a little bit of a rocky start to the year, and they know that one great way to draw customers would be if you took a blockbuster like Wonder Woman 1984 and put it on that service, say in time for Christmas when families are at home, people are at home or together. And it's also a time when people are thinking about buying new devices or signing up for new services. You're correct that from a financial perspective, that just releasing it next year is far and away the safest choice. But when you are trying to invest for the future in a new service, this feels like a good tool to try and do that.
Can we look back on the success of Disney Plus, for example? The company just reported great numbers last week in terms of how many people had actually signed up for the service. As to any indication of how successful it is to release a blockbuster direct to streaming rather than go into the theaters?
We didn't learn a ton about releasing blockbusters on streaming on that call because the one movie that they tried this with was Mulan. Most box office experts think that the Mulan release was a failure, but Disney said it was pleased. They acknowledged that there were some struggles, but said that had to do with the controversy over filming that film in Xinjiang, which is the region in China where millions of Uyghurs have been detained. It's hard for us to make a judgment. I think it's safe to say they tried to release that in this model where it's on Disney Plus, so you pay an extra $30 to rent, and that is a tough sell to customers right now.
I want to stick on this idea of HBO Max because without even knowing that you were writing this in your newsletter over the weekend, I spent a good portion of it trying to get HBO Max to work on my Roku TV. Well, spoiler alert, there is no Roku app yet for HBO Max. I couldn't get it working on my old Apple TV either, so I ended up watching HBO Max by hooking up an HDMI cable to my PC. I ended up having this conversation with two friends yesterday who also subscribe to HBO Max, but can't figure out how to get it working on their TV. It's 2020 right now, Lucas. I can't believe we're having these conversations about how difficult it is to get this app working. What can you tell us about how HBO is thinking about this?
Yeah, it's a big priority for them to get distribution on both Roku and on the Amazon devices. They just signed a deal with Amazon this morning. That should be a big deal. I mean, Roku and Amazon are the two biggest distributors on these set-top boxes, but confusion around accessing HBO Max and around the different names has been a big problem, and one I think the company has tried to talk down a little bit because they want people to come away thinking it's actually easier than it may be. I mean, I can certainly empathize with your situation as somebody who at home has had to use a different device just to watch HBO Max, and that oftentimes means that I watch it less frequently than I might have otherwise. it's been a big boost for Netflix that they sorted this all out before streaming became, a mainstream phenomenon. And also it was a big boost for Disney Plus early on that they were distributed pretty much everywhere. I have to imagine that HBO Max is working quickly to resolve its standoff with Roku. I think there was a belief that headed into the holidays, when, again, people were thinking about new devices, that they might opt for a different device than Roku. I don't know if customer loyalty to HBO Max is that great, but that's certainly the gamble they're making.
Author of the Bloomberg Screen Time newsletter, Lucas Shaw, live from New York this morning. Lucas, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quicktake now for insight in an instant.